Well, first of all, I appreciate Frank Isola mentioning that. It's something that I brought to Skip's attention over a year ago. We were hearing this about Kevin Love in Minnesota. Frank Isola, who is as plugged into the NBA as anybody, does an outstanding job for the New York Daily News, is a friend of mine as well, is right on the money with all of this. And this is the reality. I remember in Minnesota, Kevin Love one time had to be called out, according to my sources, by J.J. Barea, because one of the things he consistently did was point the finger at other people and said, that's y'all, that ain't me. And J.J. Barea was like, what are you doing? And confronted him about it. That was just one of the many instances that people in Minnesota were willing to articulate was an issue with Kevin Love. They didn't deem him to be a team player. They didn't go as far as to say locker room cancer, but he certainly wasn't deemed as an asset inside the locker room. You knew that his skill set was big time. You knew that he was worthy of being a top 2 option on the team and somebody that could get it done for you. But you really, really had reservations. I'm not talking about the owner because the owner wanted him, but you really had reservations about keeping him as a part of the franchise into the future because he just didn't appear to want to be a part of the program. Then he comes to Cleveland. Obviously, you've got LeBron, you've got Kyrie and other guys. I don't know specifically what is going on in Cleveland per se, because you can only imagine how tough it would be for him to be the third option. Sources kept saying throughout the league that Kevin Love is going to have to be Cleveland's version of Chris Bosh, but he doesn't have Chris Bosh's personality and personality makeup. Chris Bosh, I find Kevin Love to be a very nice guy, at least to me and the people I see him around. But Chris Bosh is genuine class. He's one of those guys that you could barely find anybody to say a bad word about him because he's just class personified. Just at his core, seems to be a decent guy. Kevin Love appears that way to me as well during the times that I've seen him, but others beg to differ. They say there's a different side to him, and it doesn't really ooze team player per se. How accurate that is, I don't know. So I don't want to sit up here and lambaste him or whatever, but I do know that those things have been said. I do know that what Frank Isola wrote is absolutely what is being said about Kevin Love. I reported that about a year ago. It's all true. And if it is true, like I think it is, like Frank Isola believe it is, like most folks covering the NBA thinks it is, then you know that LeBron James, somebody's going to have a problem with it. And if LeBron James has a problem with you in Cleveland, you're in a world of trouble because he's running the show. Make no mistake about it. And he's got his crew of guys, and he's not going to hate on anybody. But LeBron James is influential enough to know he doesn't have to hate on anybody. He can simply make statements like the Instagram photos and stuff like that he's put out that didn't include Kevin Love, and it speaks for itself. So it's just one of those things that you know this is not going to end well for Kevin Love. If I'm Kevin Love, you try to play lights out, you try to get a championship, and then move on to another team because it doesn't look like his future in Cleveland is that bright. And it's not an accident that a guy that they were once talking about getting max dollars, sort of a tacit agreement, Skip, unwritten, that he would re-up and the Cleveland Cavaliers would take care of him. And GM David Griffin told me personally, we have no intentions of losing Kevin Love. We're going to take care of him. Well, this is a guy that's going to be looking for max dollars. It's been on the bench in the fourth quarter 14 times this year. Didn't even play the fourth quarter. I don't know how you can give that kind of money to a guy you're not playing in the fourth quarter 14 times. I think the end of the road in Cleveland for Kevin Love is definitely this season, at the end of this season.
I am with you. And I want to say that I appreciate the fact that you have did report about the sort of off-camera Kevin Love long ago on this show. Way to go. Now, I've also mentioned in a couple of discussions we've had in which we've tried to sort of define Kevin Love, the player. I've told you that I know well another coach very familiar with Kevin Love who's told me the same thing, that Kevin is somebody that he never loved in the locker room, that he would show one face to the media, which is why maybe you've seen one face, and then a whole nother face to teammates and coaches behind closed doors. The other issue that I brought up in the basketball context is that in Minnesota, teammates and coaches began to see him as a player who did not want the ball in big, late, clutch situations. So to your point, so many fourth quarters he has sat this year. Maybe that's what they have also discovered in Cleveland. And I am so with you. LeBron James would care so much about team unity that if there's one guy who's that, as Frank Isola described him, as aloof, alienating teammates, LeBron's going to be out on that guy. And yet, to our purpose here, our question, can they win together this year, just maybe for 1 year? Could they at least win the East together? I think so. I think so, because I think LeBron will make it work. And I did love your point about Chris Bosh. I also have come to know Chris Bosh. He is class to the core. And it took him a lot of sacrificing, swallowing ego to finally fit in with two best friends, and obviously LeBron and Dwayne Wade. And yet in the end, how many big shots did Chris Bosh hit for those two in Miami? A bunch of them. So he's clutch. They came to trust him in big late moments. And none of the above applies so far to Kevin Love. But again, can LeBron make it work for 1 year? Yeah. Could they win the NBA title? We're going to discuss that a little later in the show, where they would rank against the Western Conference teams. But yeah, I'm going to give them a shot. But I don't think they're going to be palling around together off the court. And I'm with you. Long term, I don't see Kevin Love staying in Cleveland. I'm with you.